there. You're listening to the Girl Talk podcast brought to you by our friends at Momentum Tire with locations to serve you throughout North Carolina. My name is Carol.
I'm Kelly.
I'm Trisha.
And we are here with you today to talk about the holidays. They're coming.
I love holidays.
The most wonderful time of the year,
It
right?
is the most wonderful time of the year. But, you know, it's come up again among some of our conversation about when the holidays are hard. Now, I want to start this conversation by saying this could be hard for a multitude of reasons. Hard because you see people that you don't see throughout the year, and relationships are strained. We expect everybody to occupy the same space and to be on their best behavior, which we all know never happens. So, right, let's just throw that expectation out the window. But it also can be hard if you're grieving, if you're missing a loved one, if your husband or your wife is deployed. I mean, there are all sorts of different...
Family just lives on the other side of the country.
Yeah, you're
your family
lonely.
right.
Yep.
All of that.
All of those things. And so I want to start the conversation because I think we can all come at this at a different angle. What can you do to navigate difficult get-togethers? I know for me, it starts with expectations.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. Sure.
So I made mention that you know, everybody occupy the same space, everybody behave themselves. We all know that that's not true, and we can't control that. And so if I mentally prepare myself ahead of time for that, that has made the biggest difference because I don't get irritated as quickly. I don't lose my cool about it. I just go into it thinking, you know what? Everybody is different, and all these differences are going to be together for a short time. And you can do anything for a short time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about difficult relationships and navigating those, I would say start with your expectations. We all have that Norman Rockwell kind of picture in our heads of how everyone's going to sip cocoa together
In front of the fire.
around the tree and sing Kumbaya, and that never happens. It's never happened once in the history.
Sometimes it happens on social media, but it doesn't mean it happens
absolutely.
beyond that one picture.
That's right.
No. And so I think for me, it just started with managing my expectations on the front end. Because
So glad you
whether
said
it's
that.
a difficult relationship or you're grieving the loss of somebody, you just have to know that holidays are so dangerous when it comes to expectations because no one else knows your expectations.
Yeah.
That's right.
And no one else has your same expectations because we're all different. And sometimes if we can just take a step back and say, okay, this is what it is, whether it's a difficult relationship or grieving, everybody has a different way of doing that, and that is okay for this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that you said that just kind of made me stop and think is that when we are having these expectations that are unmet, we've really made it about us. We've made all of it about us. We are setting expectations that are what I want to have happen in my holidays. It is the most wonderful time of the year. So how do I make it the most wonderful time of the year for me? And those expectations are never really going to be met because it's not about us.
Right.
Yeah.
And one year when we knew we were going to have a very difficult season, we decided to turn things totally upside down and do things outside of our normal traditions on purpose so that those expectations that we knew were not going to be met weren't even there to begin with. And I think one of the things that we did that can help other people, I think, navigate hard times is that we chose to serve people instead of, opening up all the presents and feeling like all this letdown of whatever that we got outside of ourselves and decided to make it about other people and not about ourselves.
Yeah.
And that can really
good.
take the focus off of us for the holiday season as well.
Yeah.
That's so much better
Yeah,
to have the
right.
focus off us.
Yeah, because they can
it's
be so
true.
hard. Holidays can just be terribly hard.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really glad we're having this discussion because I don't know why, but I forget that. I forget that I am already setting up expectations in my mind. You might call them wishes. You might call them plans. You might call them hopes, but they're expectations. And sometimes I will even visualize them and then they don't come true. So I think it's, number one, so important to be aware of your expectations and then be able to manage them. For me, I've been thinking about one thing I'm going to need to do as we approach this holiday season. First holiday season without either of my parents. and my sister's going to be in different places, so it's not going to be the same. We're not going to have everybody all together. Being able to allow the emotions and not fight against them so hard that it triggers some behavior that's not helpful.
Yeah.
But being able in a safe place to allow the emotions and taking them to God, preparing by spending time in the Word and in prayer, knowing that that preparation has to happen. I can't just jump out of bed and go into even doing something that's good, like helping my family. I have to set aside that time in God's Word and in prayer, and take my emotions there and allow God to help me process them.
Yeah, and I think I love that you said that, because one of my things was acknowledge the hard.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really bad to act like it's not hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's not hard. We're good. Everything's fine. Ha, ha, ha. All those things.
Let's sing a little.
Holly Jolly Christmas,
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm realizing as I get a little older is that if I'll even have the discussion and acknowledge and say, okay, this is going to be hard, that it does something to release a pressure valve in my heart and soul, just to acknowledge the fact that this is going to be difficult.
And you're also teaching your daughter to do that too.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, but you are, because they're watching how we handle these things. And when we are able to acknowledge this is hard, or this is not what we were thinking, then they see that they can do that too.
Yeah.
And that takes the pressure valve down for them as well.
Yeah, that's true. I also put on my list, allow yourself to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it is grieving that things are not the same as they've always been, or grieving a loved one, or grieving a broken relationship. All of those things. I think you said that. I think they do this in Grief Share. You probably can jog my memory on this, but they say set a timer, let yourself grieve for an hour. Isn't that part of...
I'm not sure if that was in Grief Share, but it's something that I discovered when I was in Grief Share. I think it was my therapist that I was talking about scheduling grief.
Yes.
So that it's not, so that it's not pervasive throughout your entire day.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just completely just stay in your mind all day. You say to yourself, for example, okay, from 4 to 4:45, I'm going to be at home by myself, or I'm going to have some time to pray. That's when I'm going to allow myself to grieve. So I schedule that grief. And so before that, I'm doing the things that I need to do, and I'm going about my day, and then I have that time to grieve. I know that it's coming, so I don't have to, grieve throughout the day.
Right.
And then afterwards, there's that feeling of catharsis.
Yeah.
So you can have that moment too. But when you schedule some time to allow the emotions, schedule some time to grieve, you don't have to do it all day long.
That is so good. And that is like transformational too. I mean,
it can help you get through the day. If you have to keep going, and we all have to keep going. When you allow yourself that time, because number one, it's acknowledging that you need it.
Yeah.
And then number two, it's making the time for it.
Yeah. And I think that points to another important thing that I wrote down is don't be afraid to ask for help. It never hurts to tell a friend, hey, I'm scheduling grief for 4 to 4:45. Can you check on me after that just to make sure I'm not stuck? I think one of the hardest things for me, and this might come from being a single parent. It might just be in my DNA. I don't know. I have the hardest time asking for help. And so, especially during seasons like this, because I'm like, hey, everybody's got stuff. Well, that is true. Everybody does have stuff and different stuff. But I think we are stronger together. And I think when you reach out to somebody and say, hey, this is going to be a difficult day for me. This is going to be a difficult time for me. Is there a way that we could kind of touch base, maybe have coffee, or just have a phone call just to kind of make sure that you're not stuck? Because my tendency is I can do this all by myself. I'm Miss Independent and I'm strong enough and I've got to show the whole world. And then that's when I get into a dark place because I haven't been willing to ask for help.
Yes.
So I think that kind of ties to allowing yourself to grieve, but also knowing that grief has a stopping point. And even though you have to go on, making sure that somebody close to you knows, hey, check up on me just to make sure I really am okay.
Yeah. Even better, I wonder if you could find a friend to go for a walk with during that grieving time.
Yeah.
That, if you're breathing fresh air, you're outside, maybe it's going to be sunny. That'd be wonderful. You're wrapped up in your blanket or your jacket because it's cold, but you are outside and you can, I just feel like you can breathe better. You can you can get rid of some of those cobwebs when you're outside. Every time I found myself really grieving or crying or just in that emotional space, if I can get outside, it makes all the difference in the world.
There's something about moving your body that helps free up your mind and your emotions.
And I don't know if you guys are like me, but sometimes it helps to remember. You think everybody else's life has gone on like normal. Y'all know me. I love to tell stories about my daddy, and I do that quite often, like probably so much that y'all are like, will you please stop?
We love it. All that and everything.
He was so funny, such a funny guy. And I love telling stories about him. And sometimes grieving doesn't look like crying all the time. It can be you and I taking a walk and you go, have I ever told you about the time my daddy did such and so?
Yes.
And those are times that kind of revive my heart, even though I'm missing him so desperately. That is, I have a friend who, her son passed away in a car accident, and she said that to me on many occasions. She says, I'm afraid people are forgetting him, and so I will text her when we talk about him, or I will, call her whenever I see something that reminds me of him, because sometimes during that grief process, you need to know somebody else remembers too.
That's so true. And I think people are afraid to bring up your loved one who's gone because they don't want to remind you of it. Well, we're thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's not It's not slipped our mind.
Running in the background.
It's always running in the background. So, and it's lovely when someone mentions them or asks you about them or allows you to share a story with them on a walk or wherever it is. It's refreshing. And the other day we were at an event and I ran into several people who knew my mom, and it was so wonderful. Yeah. And they're like, I'm sorry, is this okay if I tell you? And I'm like, please tell me. And they would tell me stories about how kind she was and how she encouraged them in different times. And it was wonderful, and it was grieving, but it was a joyful grieving.
Yeah, that's great.
So don't be afraid to talk to your people that you love who have loved people who've passed on about their loved ones. It's important, and it's part of the healing process.
For sure. I also wrote down, don't feel bad for having new traditions, because I think one of the, at least in my mind, maybe this is the South, I don't know, the holidays are full of traditions, family traditions, and you feel like you have to keep those, even though the key players in those traditions are gone. And I felt myself a couple of years ago when we started to try to do some things different as a family, kind of bristle towards that, because I felt like that was disrespectful, but it's not. Like, you don't have to feel guilty for those things.
That's right.
Making a new tradition or doing something with the people that you still have here so that you can still celebrate, but you just do so differently. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. That, and part of the grief share talks about the fact that there's almost like a sense of guilt if you smile or you have fun or you have a new fun tradition, and you can let that go.
Yeah.
That's part of just letting that go. You can smile again. You can laugh. You can make new traditions. Yeah. And that's okay.
That's good.
Yeah. Another thing that I put on my list, and this is only because I've learned terribly from doing it terribly, is don't neglect self-care during this time. Don't get overtired. Don't overeat. Don't skip exercise. I mean, all of the things that make you a healthy human being are things that you need to pay attention to during especially the holidays. I know the tendency is to wear your stretchy pants and eat all you want. But I would say guard against that, or at least for me, that becomes a coping mechanism because I want to insulate and isolate myself, and I'm a bad emotional eater. And so those are the kind of things that I know. And if you know those ahead of time, you can kind of see that happening and go, oh, wait, am I avoiding something? Am I stuffing my feelings? Am I numbing my emotions? All of those things should make a little red light go off in your mind and say, maybe not the best choice.
Mm-hmm.
So to continue those things that you do all the other times of the year for self-care, get enough sleep, rest when you need it.
Yeah. Go for a walk.
Hydrate.
Go for a walk.
You keep going back to that.
She wants to go walk. We'll walk later.
Yeah, we're going to walk later after this episode. But all the things.
The busier you are, the more you need to do those things.
Right.
So you can't say I'm too
100%.
busy to do those things.
100%.
The busier you are, the more you need to do it.
Yeah. Take a walk as a family.
Yeah. Yeah, you can be creative
Yeah.
in this time frame, in this season.
Take a backwards walk.
There
you can walk around your house.
Walk like a duck.
I'm thinking walk like an Egyptian. That's what went to my mind.
You can walk
Listen
like
to 80s music, right? Okay. All right.
Okay,
so,
sorry.
comic relief. That's also important.
That is,
yes,
it is.
call me.
Holidays.
I'm
Have
always
some
good
fun.
for it.
That's right.
Another thing that I wrote down, brainstorm with your family some new things that you can look forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, bringing them into the process. So it's not just like, well, here comes mom with an idea. It's like, let's all come up with something. Yeah.
Because I tell you, and I'm just going to be completely honest, holidays are always hard for me. I've had several terrible things. My dad's birthday's January 4th. I miss him terribly. And so I was always with my family. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, we did everything together. And so from now till like after the New Year, I really have to be on guard. And so my daughter and I have started saying, what can we do fun this year? Let's do something fun. Let's put on our PJs and make some hot chocolate and go look at Christmas lights. Or, just something silly. Or have family game night. We're going to play Bananagrams till midnight, just because we can. Some of those things I think you have to kind of put on the horizon that you can say, I have this to look forward to, so that you don't get bogged down in the tense relationship or the missing someone or the grieving, and you have something to look forward to. That'll also keep you from getting very depressed at a time where it's easier to isolate. When you just disappear from things, people are like, oh, they're busy, they're with family, and that really can be isolating. And so I would guard against that too. Anything else that you guys?
Well, I was just thinking about the tense relationship aspect, because sometimes that does happen. And one thing that God kind of put on my heart in a similar situation was for me to think about being the light instead of just allowing the dark feeling to overtake me, but I go in and I can be the light. And there's something about that that's proactive and not reactive that helps me feel like, okay, I can do that. I can try to spread the light, even if it's a difficult relationship that I've had. I can try to be the light of Jesus in that situation, and that just helps me feel better about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great mind change.
Thinking about it like that
Yeah.
instead. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you got?
Go for a walk.
Go for a walk.
Go for a walk.
I'm going to go back to that one.
I'm thinking about going for a walk, and now I'm thinking about cheese.
Yeah.
I love cheese.
I think if you're headed into the holiday season like we are, and you're sometimes dreading it, maybe tense relationships or grieving the loss of somebody, adjust those expectations. Acknowledge it's going to be hard. Allow yourself the emotions. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't feel bad for having new traditions. Don't neglect yourself. Don't be a martyr during this time of year. I know it's hard for us as women sometimes to not take on too much, but don't do that. All those suggestions and more, we wish you the best holiday ever. I hope that you're surprised that it's not as hard as you thought it was going to be. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to pray for you. You can email us at girltalk@thelightfm.org. We want to say a very special thank you to our friends at Momentum Tire, with locations to serve you in North Carolina, for their partnership in ministry. We appreciate you folks. And we will see you next time we gather around these microphones for the next Girl Talk podcast.